Let me know if the audio is working correctly and stuff. Now, Luke,
Hey,
This meeting
Agree,
is
how are
being
you?
recorded.
good man. How are you? Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been quite a few years.
It has
Probably
been. How
around
have you
10
been?
years or so. Not too bad,
Yeah.
just still in San Francisco or in the Bay Area in general. Kids, family, work, that's pretty much it. How about you?
Well, let me close the door.
Sure.
Well, we are good. We're
hmm
great. We're in New York now, and
hmm
yeah, no kids yet. I just
Uh-huh.
got married.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
thank you, thank you.
hmm
But yeah, we got a team here, got an office,
hmm
building some really incredible stuff, and yeah, it's just
hmm
very grateful. Cannot complain.
Awesome. Where in New York are you?
We're in Chelsea.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
I used to I think 7 years ago, I was working for Accenture at the time. So they have sent me for about a year-long project. So I was kind of partially in San Francisco, partially in New York. I was at Goldman Sachs down in I guess Jersey City, is it? Just across from
Yeah,
Lower
that's right.
Manhattan. Yeah, but I stayed in Manhattan, so spent a bit of time, I guess, partially living in New York. So, but yeah, great place. I'm glad you guys are settled in over there. Awesome. So yeah, so essentially regarding the podcast, I mean, I have talked to a number of different sort of founders and engineers. Obviously, it's more tech oriented. It's really about, I think, learning about you and your company and what you're doing and kind of promoting you from that perspective. I think that's where the most value comes in, probably for all of us. So it's, I don't necessarily, I kind of take it very lightly, so it's like essentially just talking about uh more like a high level things, right? So, about your background. I'm kind of interested, obviously learning now. You and I obviously know each other from before, worked a bit many years
Mm-hmm.
back. So it's kind of essentially catching up since then, like what have you
Yeah.
done?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's very simple. So basically, I just use Zoom. I kind of record the whole like obviously like Zoom meeting, and then I just kind of extract the files, publish them on the major podcast platforms, including like YouTube. I can share the links with you.
Great.
Basically, I can put some snippets or some like promotional stuff, like if you want to drive some traffic to your sites or campaign pages, whatever might be the case, just let me
Mm-hmm.
know. But
Okay.
it's very
Okay.
simple, like, nothing complex at all here. So I think we can get, and I'm sorry, am I kind of like pronouncing it right? It's been many years. I agree, right? Is it?
Agree, just like the word.
Yeah. Okay, cool, cool. I just want to make sure I'm not like putting some extra pronunciation on specific, but okay, gotcha. All right, cool. So let's get in started. I'm just gonna click here on the recording real fast, and then oh, actually, you know what? So it looks like I forgot this is your Zoom, right? So I'm gonna send you a request, and then you can kind of
Perfect. Boom.
record it from there.
Okay. You got the request going? Or are
Yeah,
you able to? I just approved
yeah,
it.
cool. So we're recording. Okay, so all right. So let's start with three, two, one. Agree. Thank you for being my guest today on Anablock Podcast. Um, you have a very interesting past. You and I have worked briefly together many years back. We haven't really
Yeah.
talked for a while, so it's great to kind of catch up on a podcast today. So maybe let's kick it off by like, I guess, can you tell us a bit about what you're currently doing? You guys had some really good announcements recently, so I want to kind of share that with the public. So let me know, what's your current role? Where are you?
Yeah. So we're building a new payment provider that handles the entire job to be done. It basically makes it so that you can add payments to your app so that you can monetize it and you don't have to write any glue code. We don't just move the money for you. We also tell you what features your customers get access to, what seats they can purchase, what usage credits they have, what, Boolean sort of feature gates you can rely on. And it's totally open source. So that's like it's called Flowglad. We've been building it now for about a year. Grateful to say, it's backed by Y Combinator. We have some other folks, also some really like amazing other folks on the cap table, like not announced yet, but yeah, I think you're probably thinking about the sort of like recent like wave of launches that we had done last year.
Mhm. Got it. So can you tell me, like, that's very interesting. So I guess, can you maybe share some use cases specifically? Like, as an engineer, I worked with a number of different payment providers. Obviously, like, the big ones are Stripe and so on. But I guess from that perspective, like, what are some of the use cases, how developers get engaged with the platform and things of that nature?
Okay, so in a nutshell, like if you look at a very vanilla SaaS checkout flow,
Mm.
where we're not even talking about like usage meters, we're not even talking about like seat-based billing, just like, is my customer subscribed or not, right? Using a conventional payment integration with a conventional payment provider, um, including, yeah, like all the ones that sort of like you've heard of or the big ones, um, it requires no fewer than 17 different server client boundary hops that have to happen that you have to choreograph or Claude Code has to choreograph. And what's interesting about this is that even in a world where like sort of like on the margins, like coding is a solved problem, it doesn't make the maintenance of your code any easier, right? And specifically, I think some of the hardest code to maintain is choreography code, because it's like you need to make sure that all the state transitions across a very complex sequence of events work accordingly. And you have to sort of map, for example, in your payment processor's uh, API, what your customer's ID is to your database's customer ID. And so what we've built, like the thing that really like draws people in, is that we've built this integration pattern that is default stateless from your perspective. It's very similar to like how a React app works. It's like, the way we like to describe it is it's almost bringing the reactive programming paradigm to payments and saying, okay, what are all the things that are nearby payments that you have to integrate in to your payments flow? And can we handle those things for you as well? Like most importantly, like, feature entitlements and soon actually like tax compliance as well.
Hmm, interesting. So I think, like, so primarily it sounds like the product is primarily geared towards developers to use the SDK or the APIs that well, I guess to some extent you probably, yeah, provide APIs to essentially integrate their basically to use you as a payment gateway. Are you as far as, like, I guess, can you kind of maybe walk us through like the kind of on the high level steps, like as far as the integration goes, like what would that look like from the perspective of maybe creating an account to like reviewing the docs, embedding the code? What's the
Yeah,
developer
yeah.
experience overall?
Yeah, let me actually see if I can pull up very quickly um uh the website, and I can maybe even like kind of go through a screen share with you.
Yeah, that would be
Um
great. This is very interesting. I'm very curious. I work with a lot of different payment providers for a lot of different clients. So this is interesting. I'm curious if you're able to kind of share a little bit more so we can explore a little bit maybe deeper. Not too
yeah.
deep, obviously, but just to
No, no,
understand
no, not like
from
too in the weeds. That's the
sure.
whole point. Yeah. We don't want it to be too deep in the weeds. So
Mm,
I have this already existing account, and that'll hopefully save
sure.
us some time. But basically, like you can provide a code base context where we have like a prompt that you can even open in Cursor, for example, where
And if you want,
it.
you can also share screen. I'm not sure if that's something you want to,
Oh,
but just it's open to sharing too.
okay, great. Are you able to see? You're able to see the web app, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Great, great. Okay, yeah, I think that that actually should be sufficient. But basically, like,
Okay, cool.
uh, the you give kind of like you can give Flowglad a brain dump of how your code base is configured, and then save it, and then you can set up what we call pricing models. And these pricing models basically will it's almost like a schematized version of your entire business and how it works, right? So like how much people are paying. We even have free plans as a core construct, because for us to be able to model all of your customers, like what features they get access, we actually have to be able to model the customers who are not on a paid subscription, which is like, again, sort of giving you a hint of how we're treating this like entire job to be done. You can specify the features that your customers get, right? So this one's actually pretty bare bones, but I can show you maybe like this AI image generation subscription has, yeah, a bunch of different like products. One that you can top up, some that are like subscription. Um, and we have, like, for example, usage meters that you can provide credits on, and features that will even give you, for example, a way to describe for each of your products what features you want to grant as a result of them, right? And then this is where it gets kind of fun, is that you can integrate via prompt. So you don't need to even comb through the docs really. Like what we're doing under the hood here is we are generating based off of your the code base analysis that you provided us, as well as the specifics of this pricing model. We're going to be generating an integration guide that handles all of the stuff that your coding agent is going to need to be able to integrate Flowglad. So the whole idea is basically like, imagine if the experience was, instead of the docs being amazing, it was like you didn't even have to worry about the docs, or
No,
the
that's a
docs
great
were like,
idea.
yeah, the docs. What if the docs were like
Mhm,
infinite, right? In the sense that you had your personal set of docs for your integration, and then
mhm.
when it's ready to go, it's like generating this in real time. Um, Once this thing is completed, then you can copy it and basically feed it to Cursor or Claude Code, and it'll just like integrate it for you.
Very interesting. So you're basically generating here like sort of like a LLMS.md file for
Yeah,
LLM consumption. Okay.
exactly. Exactly. That's the idea. And it, like, the thing that's different about our integration paradigm is that our SDK is full stack by default. What that
Mhm.
means is that you don't just have this like REST API that you call out to with us. You also have like an entire sort of basically like front end and back end that, give me one second. Oh, we didn't get the recording in progress. That's great.
Mhm.
You have an entire backend SDK and a front end SDK. So, for example, we ship with React hooks,
Mhm.
and you can load up your customer's billing state on your front end, like
Okay.
using the hook, and you can see what features that customer has access to on your front end. You can see what resources they've consumed, right? What usage meters
Mhm.
they have events with. If you want to generate, for example, like graphs and things like this, we handle all of that for you.
Awesome. So one of the, obviously most modern frameworks today is Next.js. I'm kind of curious, like maybe if you can walk us through what would that look like from a perspective, essentially having a Next.js app or front end calling or integrating with your SDK and the hooks that are available.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, we take a lot of inspiration from like tools like Betteroff. Funny enough, actually, like we did a bunch of this stuff. We like designed a lot of the workflow on our own before we'd even poked around the Betteroff docs, and it turns out that they had arrived at a lot of similar decisions. But like uh, basically, here's how it works: is that you, one, have a constructor method that you will use to get access to the Flowglad SDK client on the back end, right? And the constructor method, it just accepts a string that is the customer ID in your system, not our system, yours,
Mhm.
right? And then inside that constructor method, you will define how to construct a Flowglad client. So you need to provide us basically just a single function, which is given a customer ID from your system, how do we derive that customer's name and email address? That's it. Okay.
Mhm.
And then you mount on a Next.js app, let's say, you will mount an API route that Flowglad is going to use through your front end. So you like have this API route that lets the Flowglad hooks on your React front end um, call the Flowglad API, authenticates based off of your guys' authentication layer, your app's authentication layer, to what
Mhm.
customer you're talking about, and then lets you now get the billing data, what resources they're using, whatever, based off of your auth. Okay.
Okay.
And then you don't need to use any price IDs or anything like this. You refer to everything with us via slugs that you define.
Interesting. So let me ask you, like, so for example, I'm not sure if you heard of Clerk, let's say that's one of the more popular authentication platforms
Mm-hmm.
where essentially they do a lot of the user and session management, and then you have an option to use a webhook and write that data into your user table, for
Yeah.
example. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious if so that's kind of obviously, there's other frameworks like Supabase and
Yeah.
Next.js that kind of work similarly. So when you have that structure, how do you essentially, how does your system know which user I'm talking about or which customer ID I'm talking about? I'm just kind of curious, like, how does it operate within that context of like authentications and so on?
Yeah, yeah. So we the route handler basically exposes like an identify uh parameter where you can say given a request object, right? How would you derive the uh customer ID, right? So for example, if you have a customer that is an organization and
Hmm.
authentication is obviously at the user level, you can provide the logic for given that request how to derive, let's say, the organization ID. If you're
Hmm.
using Better Auth, we have a plugin for Better Auth that is aware of whether or not you're using like organization mode as your customer model or user mode, and then will derive based off of that like whether or not there's an active organization ID on the user.
Hmm.
So that's how we do it with Better Auth. It's a funny thing. It's actually a really,
Hmm.
really funny thing. When we first shipped the Flowglad SDK, we had this vision, right? We knew that this was going to be sort of like how it was going to work. It was going to be very tightly coupled with auth. One thing that we kind of ended up like being wrong about, that we had to like redesign the API when we realized this. We thought that we should provide adapters for like Supabase auth, for Clerk, for Better Auth. That turned out to not be the right model. It's surprising. It
Hmm.
turns out that like the better way to do it is to provide the tersest possible API
Hmm.
to let you worry about the implementation details of how to basically compile down or like sort of compress down whatever the authentication story is on your side into a single string, and then give us a way of then identifying from that string like the customer ID what the details are of that customer. Those are the only two pieces of information you need to provide to Flowglad. Anything more than that, we found out was just like overcomplicating it.
Awesome, very interesting. So, kind of maybe switching gears a little bit on the to the sort of business side of things. I'm curious, how did you come up with this concept? Like, where did you see maybe gaps in the market? Obviously, there's a lot of sort of players in the general market. So I'm just kind of
Right.
interested to learn more about that business part of the idea.
Yeah. It's really funny. So like one thing was that I knew that internally I really, really loved payments. This is like funny enough, a thing that I saw over the course of like our last startup together, Harrison and I, that it went through multiple different iterations, but every single time, the thing that would always end up sort of nerd sniping me was the payments layer. And when I looked at all the businesses that Harrison and I had built together over the last like 7 years, um, when it became clear there was like sort of time to sort of figure out what was next, um, it every single one of them was a transaction volume business with a complex cross-border flow of funds. So I was like, okay, two tech guys, two like software guys, and this is every time we choose what like business we're going to go into,
Mhm.
these were always the problems we were choosing to solve. That was an interesting hint. But then the second part was that over the course of that business, um, uh, it was just around for so long that it's sort of like we ended up getting to use so many different generations of auth. When we started, we were on auth 0 was our first sort of auth provider. And then later, when we launched a new product, we moved over to Supabase auth. And then later after that, when we had the chance, we used Clerk. And same thing with databases. We were, I remember my first database was on EC2, and it was like MySQL on EC2. And then we were on Postgres with RDS, and then we were on Supabase. Hosting, kind of similar story. First it was EC2, then it was Lambda serverless, and then it was Vercel. Um, Look at that, right? Every single one of these was like I like have been around as a founder now for long enough that like I've gotten to use multiple different layers of the stack. The one thing that was the same every single time was payments. It hasn't changed really in my time as a founder. It's just starting that like people are exploring new methods. And that was really what gave me the sort of aha moment was like this layer is the slowest moving one. It's the one that's had the least innovation. And in the developer experience. And so it just became clear to us like it was also the part, honestly, that was the most annoying to configure and maintain. It was always the most brittle part of our code base. And we thought, what would it look like to solve this problem for the general case, not just solve like the one narrow aspect or some of the narrow aspects we had ourselves? And it turned out actually we were very close. The problems we were running into were very close to the bullseye of problems that like everybody runs into around tax compliance, state management, mapping money movements, right? And billing events to feature access. And then being able to maintain representations of this that are consistent across time and across different versions of your product.
Interesting. On kind of that note, how much sort of regulatory hurdles or maybe red tape did you have to deal with, or did you have to deal with anything at all?
Yeah, so
As
this
far
is
as
the
like, yeah, federal state compliance, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but
yeah. So this is the part that some people might find scary, and I think that like we at Flowglad actually find very fun. Is navigating sort of these like compliance questions. So this is also sort of the difference between billing and payments, right? Billing is sort of like much more concerned with like the software related to sort of abstractions that sit on top of payments. But then payments is actually the sort of like these like this is where the like sort of the compliance and regulatory questions come in. The short answer is that like we had to deal with these questions ourselves, um, by ourselves at our previous business because we had customers in different geographies, and so we were running into like all kinds of like crazy tax compliance issues. Not like we were behind on tax compliance, but just like headaches related to like staying in compliance with every jurisdiction, because the taxes, the way they work on the internet is that they are due wherever the customer is based
yep.
regardless of where the merchant is based. So it's almost like doing business on the internet basically maximizes the surface area of your back to take arrows from different tax authorities,
Mm.
right? So there's a tax compliance component, and then like there's sort of like obviously the anti-fraud and risk and sort of like
Mhm.
um you know
KYC stuff or
yeah. So
Mhm.
like right now,
Mhm.
we are under the hood. We're using Stripe to process the payments and handle that whole like processing aspect. But
Mhm.
the business very, very clearly and explicitly is sort of like built around the belief that to
Mhm.
solve this problem, you can't just build billing software. So we try to make it very clear to everybody. It's like, hey, this is where we are right now, but we're not done building on the back of house. All of our focus right now is just like, give me a second. Okay, cool. I don't know how you
Mhm.
get it to not say recording in progress. It's
Mhm.
very
Mhm.
impressive.
Mhm.
But um, uh, all of our building right now is focused on the front of house, but increasingly we are building more and more back of house capabilities so that we can, do things like, we want to get to a place where you can build a marketplace on top of Flowglad. We need to have some more licenses in order to be
Hmm.
able to do that, right? There's also another part of this is like sort of uh, finding a bank that's willing to work with you, right? And these are things that like I don't think the average founder would find these very riveting questions, but we do.
I'm curious. You and I met in San Francisco. Now you're in New York. Do you think it's easier to be in fintech, essentially New York, due to the larger, well, I'm sure larger everything from compliance to investors and so on. But I guess it's more beneficial, probably, I would assume.
Yeah, I think that there are many ways in which this is like this feels like a New York startup, right?
Hmm.
There are many ways in which it feels more like a San Francisco startup than the typical New York one, because
Hmm.
obviously, like yeah, as Harris and I have like deep roots running back to San Francisco, and yeah, I it's an
Yeah,
interesting
we met
question.
at a startup at a time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, exactly, yeah. All
Yeah.
three of us met at that
Mm.
startup, and so
Mm.
like it's a good question. I feel like there's a very deep pool of back of house, like the sort of back of house engineering that you need done.
Mhm.
There's a very deep pool of that talent here, which is really,
Mhm.
really advantageous, I think. It would be
Mhm.
harder, I think, to find the kind of people you need to build a low latency fraud engine.
Mhm.
Um, in SF than it would be in New York. I think that you can much
Mhm.
more effectively build a world class team here on that than you would be
Mhm.
able to in SF. Not that like SF is great too. It's just you're probably right that there's like a regional advantage that you would have in building this in New York than in SF.
Interesting. How do you compare? You spend obviously, quite a bit of time in the tech industry, San Francisco and New York. How do you compare, for example, the two tech scenes, the two startup scenes overall?
I think that they're both great. Um, I think that
Which one's bigger? I guess maybe
San
volume
Francisco's is
wise.
Yeah, San Francisco's is almost certainly bigger. San
Hmm.
Francisco's is definitely bigger. New York's is not like tiny though. It's actually like
Hmm.
it's probably after San Francisco. This is also, by the way, this is how New York is as a city. It's number one in everything
Hmm.
except for everything else, in which it's always at least number two, right? It's
Hmm.
like in New York in any dimension, it's like it's always like the number one or number two in everything. And so in yeah, in the case of tech, I think that it's like you got to hand it. Like obviously, San Francisco is that's like the main event. But I think that like what's different about tech in New York is that like one, I feel like there's like kind of like a bit more of a community dynamic. I don't know how to put my finger on it, but I think that maybe like tech being such a monoculture in San Francisco, it actually makes it a little bit more difficult to in some ways I feel like it can make it a little bit more difficult to navigate. Um I personally like the fact that like if you want to sort of like go all in New York City, you can. And then when you want to recharge and maybe take like a little bit of a break to touch grass and like go talk to people who do not have
Yeah.
Claude code open all day, like you can
Yeah.
do that, you know? But yeah. I mean, the other thing I'll say is this, right? Like I feel like that um there's a little bit more of intense sort of conformist mimetic energy in San Francisco than there is I think in New York, right? Um yeah, in San Francisco it's just like I think everybody is so dialed into like the latest things that are happening, which is awesome, but also like I think sometimes it can be nice to have a little bit of distance, that thing that like
Yeah.
Warren Buffett said about like, building in Omaha was very advantageous because he sort of like was insulated from a lot of the groupthink on Wall Street. I think that there's like definitely some of that there as well.
Yeah, very interesting. So you have and your partner co-founder Harrison have been accepted to Y Combinator before, and just to kind of tell the audience that's like one of the probably most difficult things in the startup world to do, because I think it's like somewhere way below 1% of applicants actually get to be part of one of the cohorts that I think it's twice a year or three times now, maybe
I think
that's
they're doing
happening.
4 times a year now.
Oh,
Yeah.
4 times now. Okay. So anyway, having said that, it's like a super prestigious thing to do. I'm curious, like, what was your experience? How did you guys come up with your, I guess, did you go once? I know they invested maybe fund or their VC arm invested into your company
Yeah,
recently.
yeah, yeah. So
But how was your experience from I guess from the get-go, from the
from
beginning?
the get-go, yeah. So
Mhm.
we did YC for the Winter 20 batch. So it was a little while back. I think a lot has changed honestly in that time, but a lot of things have also, from what I've seen and what I've heard, they've been continuous, right? So like
Mm.
YC is just, it's like crazy support system. It's like insane, right? You have uh such immediate access, like all the sort of like superpowers that come from time spent deep in the startup ecosystem. It's like it like fast tracks that, right? And so you are, I think, like basically the two biggest things that like it felt like we got from YC were, one, being around sort of people who are holding themselves to world-class standards and seeing upfront, up close and personal, like front row, what great looks like. That's there's no replacement for that, right?
Mhm.
um and seeing that early on, I think a lot of people have a hard time getting access to world class performance at the beginning of their careers. So we were really, really fortunate that we got to sort of see that, and it completely sort of like changes your belief of what's possible, right? And your conception of like what great could be.
Can you
Second,
maybe
yeah,
sorry, elaborate a little bit more on that world-class performance, meaning like from the staff to maybe the other companies that you're surrounded by, or what does that exactly mean?
like, okay, like as an example, during our batch, we were, funny enough, like we were accepted as an on-demand grocery delivery service for Kenya, right?
No, interesting.
Yeah. So it's sort of like one of our strange claims to fame is that in
And it was
2019.
Harrison and you, right? Or
Yeah, it
yeah,
was me and
okay,
Harrison.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And for anyone watching, like I'm obviously, like, I'm not Kenyan, and Harrison is also not Kenyan. We're like just two
Yeah.
American guys who touched down in Nairobi in like 2018. But
Mhm.
um uh yeah, like we got in for that business, and our group partner basically immediately connected us with the first hire at Rappi, which was like sort of had very successfully done something similar in Latin America. And it, like, by the time we connected with them, Rappi was like worth like $4 or $5 billion, right? So imagine you're like talking with like the founding hire of this like multi-billion-dollar like on-demand business, and he's explaining to you how they did it, right? Um, Completely changes your conception of what's possible, right? There's like countless other examples like that, but
Mhm.
that was like one. We got to talk with like the founder of Instacart, or one of the co-founders of Instacart, Max Mullen, right?
Mhm.
Like before the batch even started. So there's just like an extraordinary sort of like network that you can tap into with YC, that I think is the biggest thing by
Mhm.
far, is that community.
Mhm. That's interesting. So you kind of met and probably dealt with a lot of you know, kind of high caliber, I guess, highly ambitious people, to put it that way. I guess I'm curious, like, because a lot of them are going to be engineers, but at the same time, sort of entrepreneurs
Hmm.
or business people. So I guess what is that drive? What differences you might have noticed, dealing specifically with that group towards dealing now with the wider tech community? I guess what's the difference?
Um, there's a couple things. Like the first is that the same way like people in tech have a very quick shared understanding of things when they meet each other, even if they haven't like met before,
Hmm.
compared to like people who are not in tech. It's like that even more accentuated within YC, that it's like not just like tech people meeting other tech people, it's founders meeting other founders. And then it's like really like founders who went through this like very formative program meeting other founders who like, so we all know sort of like we have our own experiences of dealing with the anxiety of demo day and the dread of whether or not you're going to make your demo day goals or you'll be ready in time. There's just like a lot of like it feels very similar to like a college alumni network in that sense. um and then the other difference I think is that like YC founders, regardless of how their startups go, they have a much higher sense of agency. They have a much higher sense that like more is within their locus of control than maybe the average person realizes. This is true for all people. Much more is within your locus of control than you might be aware. In part because you can make decisions and have consequences, right? Like in a really positive way, when you realize that, oh, I could just do that. YC, alumni, I think at a much higher rate sort of have internalized that. And I think this is also why like startups oftentimes will brag about how many like YC alum are on their team. Um, I think it's like inevitable, right? That it's like this is similar to they were doing this back in the day with like Harvard alumni or like whatever, like MIT alums. I think that it's a similar thing. You go through a training program that like molds your mind in a certain way, and it causes you to think differently or approach problems differently.
Interesting. What is, I guess, maybe you kind of touched on before that Harrison and you did a few other things or a few other businesses. Can you maybe share a little bit more with us? What else have you done over the last, I guess, 10 years?
Yeah. So okay, the full story truncated is that
Hmm.
Harrison and I knew that we wanted to build something together when we met at Clara, where we met you, right?
Yeah.
The SoFi acquired mortgage bank, and
Hmm.
um, when it became clear that we were going to kind of go on to what was next, we're like, well, what would that be? I shared with him this idea that I had that the emerging markets were this place that we could build really fascinating, impactful, foundational infrastructure, right? The dream of a technologist. But it was a place that also oftentimes is overlooked by Silicon Valley. And I saw this from like, when I had been in college, I took a semester off to go work at a startup in Nairobi as a mobile engineer, right? And I saw when I touched down just like immediately how much was unlocked, how much capability was unlocked because of their payment rails. They have this like local payment system called M-Pesa. And everything was powered by M-Pesa. Everybody used M-Pesa. You needed like all you needed was a SIM card, not even a smartphone. Like a brick phone could send and
Hmm.
receive M-Pesa money. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. Lo and behold, by the time Harris and I are talking about, well, what are we going to do next? We see that US startups are raising money from like top tier VCs in Silicon Valley and setting up shop in Nairobi, figuring out what business models they can sort of like bring to market using M-Pesa, and then raising more cash to then like actually like scale up those operations in other geographies. I thought, well, why not us, right? And next thing you know, we are cold calling the Central Bank of Kenya while we still had our day jobs. So like while you and I were like, showing up to like engineering all hands meetings and stuff like this,
Hmm.
I was like working with Harrison over like night basically, cold calling the Kenyan Central Bank. And we
Wow.
were yeah we still had our day jobs, and like so we like
Mhm.
call in at like 10 p.m. Pacific time when the bank opened.
What's the
And
time difference, by the way, between, I guess we were in well, we were in San Francisco at the time, so
yeah,
Pacific
yeah,
versus.
it would have been like 11 hours.
Oh, okay, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
So we called as soon as the bank opened because we wanted to get to sleep, right? But
Mhm.
after a couple months of like back and forth, like we found ourselves basically in like our early 20s in an unstructured negotiation with an African central bank, and we
Mhm.
ended up getting granted one of the country's first ever letters of no objection, right? For our fintech, by the central bank. Like it was crazy. Like there's like their letterhead and everything, and like it said our company's name on it. Like wild. That gets us conviction to like just book one-way plane tickets and give notice at work, and we're just now setting up shop and moving to Nairobi. We are there, and basically like we end up tinkering around in like the wholesale supply chain space, which sort of then leads us to an adjacency in on-demand grocery. And that's kind of like where things then start to sort of like take off. We get into YC, I think like the second ever Kenyan company to get into YC at that point. And we realize while we're in the batch that this thing just doesn't have escape velocity. So we come back to the basics and decide we want to build a marketplace that sources designers from around the world. Because Harrison, obviously, he went to RISD, has this fantastic design eye, and match them with startups, first in the YC community and then beyond, on a subscription basis. And this ends up doing decently well, like not like a crazy compounding business because of like just the sort of the nature of churn for these things, but it gets us to a place where we're like, okay, this is like this has reached its terminal sort of end state. What would it look like to sort of like figure out what's next? And we decided, from our past experiences, that what we wanted to do was build a payment processor, right? And so that's kind of like, we raised promoted a CEO from within. She ran Numi for a year, and then we actually just like sunset the business at the end of last year. So that kind of like hot off the presses, and we've been full time on Flowglad for a little over a year now. So it's been like a sort of 7-8 year journey of like building, and now 2-3 different like geographies, and just it's been a blast.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's cool about Kenya. On a quick personal note about Kenya, I have never been to Kenya. However, before I moved to the United States back in '93, I lived in Tehran, Iran, and I went to
Ooh,
international school. Yeah, where this was like '92, '93, where my best buddy was Douglas, is his name, was from Kenya, and his dad was the ambassador of Kenya to Iran. So anyway, that's
wow,
like that's
that's
my kind of
crazy.
small connection to Kenya.
Yeah.
Uh, Excellent.
How was Iran in the 90s?
Um, it was definitely not as bad as it is today.
Sure.
It wasn't good, but but overall, it was different. Obviously, me being from, I'm originally from former Yugoslavia, Bosnia, so being from that area, you get a little bit more privilege, I guess, to put it that way. But overall, it's a very interesting country, great people. Just the regime, um,
Yeah, yeah, the
it's
regime,
a whole
man.
different story.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Excellent. So that's very interesting. So then, I'm curious, like, as a founder today, like, how do you spend your kind of day-to-day operations? Obviously, you guys raise money, you have to have some investors to deal with, code to write, like,
Lots of code to write, lots of
yeah.
code to write. Thankfully, I mean, the investors are very easy. They've been
Mhm,
very supportive. Um, yeah, okay. Pie chart of my day looks
mhm,
so weird compared to where I thought it was going to be like, say, six
mhm,
years ago. Um, Basically, most of the day at this point now is like spent. It used to be spent like in the code editors. Now it's mostly like not even spent inside of Cloud Code. It's like spent like preparing the documents or the game plans that we're going to be feeding to Cloud Code to do the work, reviewing other teammates game plans, helping teammates like craft better game plans and like
mhm,
level up their game plan writing, a bunch of design decisions. And then the rest of the time honestly is just spent like figuring out like what other things we can do to sort of bring Flowglad to market. So a lot of
mhm,
last year was spent building. Dude, it was like absurd. There's just so
mhm,
much to build, right? And now we have like a team that's sort of like running so many of these ideas to the finish line. Um, that on the flip side, it's like I'm spending more and more of my time actually sort of being Flowglad's like founding developer relations engineer. Um, and yeah, trying to spend a little bit more time sort of like sharing publicly,
mhm.
and thinking about how we could do that.
I'm curious, like, as far as your go-to-market strategy, are you obviously you mentioned developer relations, which is obviously important for your type of business. But in general, do you sort of go maybe after some enterprise kind of customers, or how do you make those decisions essentially? Where do you start? What do you target? Obviously, you don't
Yeah.
have to share too much. It's your, secret
No, I
sauce, but
mean,
just in general, how do you make those kind of strategic decisions? What I'm
we're
interested in.
we're open source, so we try to like open
Hmm.
source as much of our thinking and the fruits of our thought as much as possible. So like, I mean, in a nutshell, it's like with payments, you you are basically like the market that you can serve is the market that you should go after. And
Mhm.
I think that for enterprises, it's like no secret, right? If you look at the history of any payments company, they never very rarely, I should say, do they start with enterprises. And if they do, it's like because they've decided to build that type of a business, right? But the ones where it's like sort of like they're like, hey, we want to build payments for developers, let's say, they take a very different approach. So like our go to market, the way we think about it is like honestly, the product is the best vehicle to go to market. So if we can deliver value for developers who are building in a particular stack, that's the way to do it, right? Rather than like going to a different approach where it's like you're trying to sell it. Yeah, I think that we're just trying to sort of like figure out more and more every day. We ask ourselves like, what can we give to the developer community? Because if you give and you give and you give, right, that's like it just pays back a gajillion times over. And that's kind of the approach we're taking for go to market. It's just like literally we even have, I'll show you. This is so funny. We have a thing called the giving list where we're keeping a list of ideas of like what can we do to give. And it's there's more on the list than is on this piece of paper, but like we keep it here in the studio just like to keep this thing top of mind.
Awesome. What, so as far we have a, a lot of sort of mostly engineers, developers obviously are in tuned in related to the Anablock podcast. I'm curious, like when should the developers start thinking about Flowglad? At what stage of
Oh
task
yeah.
assignment, or maybe architects at to certain extent? Uh, can you kind of walk us through that process? Maybe what
Basically
you
like
think? Mhm.
as soon as you have authentication stood up, you can integrate Flowglad really, really easily. And we're working on some really powerful capabilities that will also add Flowglad into your CI process so that you can essentially get like CI guarantees about the type safety of like your payments layer. And not just type safety like internal, but even are the types safe relative to the state of your payments configuration, right? In Flowglad. So like as soon as you have auth set up and you know roughly in natural language how you would want to just like model your pricing, that's the best time to add Flowglad basically.
Awesome. So I do have a kind of also maybe more of a specific use case to kind of touch on real quick, and you can tell
Yeah.
me essentially if you can cover it, or if it's on your roadmap. But one of the requests that we, for example, we work with a lot of different clients in across different industries. So for example, for this use case, we're working with a medical equipment manufacturer that's selling some medical equipment. So it's a B2B scenario. So these are kind of, higher price points. So obviously they want to have, credit
Right.
cards plus PayPal plus some kind of a format like Affirm or Klarna. So I'm kind of curious,
Mm-hmm.
essentially having like an installment payment format of some sort. I'm
Yeah.
curious if you guys are covering some of those use cases.
Yeah, for sure. There's like we have a bunch of different payment methods that you can check out with. There's like, yeah,
Mhm.
there's I think that some of these things also like are a little bit like if there's a payment method that you want that is not available on your checkout, like just you can reach out to us and we'll configure it for you. Because one of the challenges here, right, is that we are responsible for like managing the checkout form. I mean, for right now, like we're essentially embedding it from our backend provider, but like we have a set of default configurations, and then there's like also like a whole richer set of configurations that you can get that we can sort of like you let us know sort of like what payment method it is that you want to enable, and then we can just enable it for you on
Mhm.
the back end, and then it'll show up on your checkout screen basically.
Awesome. That sounds great. Great. Well, Agree. It's been absolute pleasure. Thank you so
Likewise.
much for sharing about Flowglad. For everyone listening and watching this, we will enclose everything in the description of this episode. And then please go check out Flowglad and Agree's tools. Thank you again. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Vuk. Thank you
Bye.
for having me on. All right.
All right, cool. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Sick.
That was really I'll just turn it on off. But that was really cool. like good to learn a lot about a lot of these things, like especially about Kenya. I had no idea.
Yeah,
So
dude.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for this was great. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome, man. Cool. Well, then I will go ahead and kind of edit just a bit of the end and maybe a bit of the beginning of this and post it, and then I'll share the link probably by Monday. I'll have it already, and then
Wow. Wow.
we can,
Sick. So
yeah.
I'm curious to know
Mhm.
how long have you been doing the Anablock podcast?
So I started like about probably 4 years ago, but I had some gaps due to work volumes, and it can be
Sure.
sometimes, the biggest challenge is getting people. It's kind of like having an assistant just to do scheduling, because that's like the
Really?
biggest challenge. Yeah, because people can cancel, reschedule,
Oh
like you have to
yeah.
fit in the calendar with everything else. Because so that was sort of the biggest slag. But overall, I love sort of. I talk to a lot of founders, especially like people that I meet kind of here in the city, and then a lot of great things to learn basically. So
That's amazing. And so have
yeah.
you like besides scheduling, like, is it difficult to find guests to come onto the podcast?
um I mean, I would say it's not easy, but it's not hard either. Somewhere, I guess, in the middle, a lot of people that are looking to promote something are available. Um, but in some cases, maybe certain people that are, don't have anything to promote or say, that you think would be an interesting person because they have a great background or something else,
Yeah.
they're kind of just blow you off. So it really, yeah, it's not, yeah, definitely it's like becomes a bit of a job too. So it's
Sure,
kind of great to
sure.
talk like this, that's the easy part, but it's more like, okay, reaching out, going back
Yeah,
and
yeah, and
forth.
getting a
Yeah.
hold of people. So,
Yeah. On top of
okay.
everything else that you have to do in your
Right,
day.
right. Okay. I
Yeah.
have then another question, which is like how like roughly like how much like do you have a sense of what the viewership is for Anablock?
I mean, for all this, yeah, because I'm using Podbean, I have to look the recent analytics, but it's like, maybe few hundred. Overall, it's like, I don't know, like less definitely than 5,000 across all the episodes, but it's few hundred. But I'm looking now as of this year to kind of amp it up a little bit more.
Sick.
So that's kind of you. Harrison reached out to me because I reached out to him maybe a year ago, and then he was like, "Hey, blah blah blah." I was like, "Oh, great, awesome, perfect
Oh,
timing."
sick. Okay, perfect timing. I
So
love
yeah,
that.
so I'm kind of been talking like a few other folks. So yeah,
That's amazing. And then
but for
final
me,
thing
it's
I
more
was
like just interesting, like to do. I'm not promoting and making money off of it. It's more of like just good to talk and learn the things, and then also gives me a little bit of PR space in the whole like
totally. Well, the final
digital
thing
ecosystem. Yeah.
I was gonna ask also is like
Mhm.
on the subject of the giving list, like
Yeah.
as a podcast guest,
Hmm.
how could like what would be in your mind like the most giving version of a podcast guest? Like what is the most that they could do to help the Anablock podcast achieve its goals?
Hmm. Um, you know, being like kind of, essentially like being a good TV persona, to put it that way, right? So having a, good appearance and interesting story. So basically storytelling, I would say, having a
Really?
storyteller that can, make things interesting. Because I have like a lot of, I posted on LinkedIn and different sources. I get feedback from people about certain episodes and stuff like that. And then obviously people that are promoting their companies are posting on their stuff, so they get feedback from their colleagues or whatever might be the case.
Whoa.
So there's kind of a bit of maybe potentially could be a little of a viral effect too. It's a really kind of interesting stuff. And then obviously knowing how to post it on like platforms, especially like YouTube, knowing how their algorithms work, like
Oh
how to
yeah.
set up the thumbnail. And I've been sort of studying that over the last few months. Even build like a little AI agent to essentially research YouTube and then create a thumbnail with my image and my
Oh,
text
sick.
format and stuff like that.
Sick.
So I kind of, yeah, I've been preparing, but it's like if I probably need to invest more money, have an assistant just to do the scheduling part, because that's like where and I don't like doing that either. It's like, oh my God, I have to deal with this now. So,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
love
yeah.
talking to people like you. So
Yeah, likewise,
yeah,
likewise, dude.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
this was awesome. That's actually
Mhm,
really great feedback. Thank you. I
mhm,
will keep that in mind because we're trying to get a little bit more like on the podcast circuit this year as
mhm.
well. And so it may just be, yeah, literally perfect timing crossing
Yeah.
paths.
I definitely would like for your products. I'll share something actually with you where I'll send you this link. But for example, I was introduced to a lot of different. So I've implemented like, and I'll definitely try your product too. But I've implemented a lot of these sort of. I've been kind of in the industry for a long time. They were
Yeah,
called
yeah.
payment gateways at one point, right?
I
A
remember.
long time
Yeah.
ago. Yeah. So anyway, so and a lot of it I've learned through YouTube. Essentially, finding someone that has created a video was sponsored by someone like you to
Yeah.
show everyone else how to do it.
Yeah.
So there's this guy. I'm from former Yugoslavia. He's like also from there, from Croatia, Antonio. So I'll share his link with you.
Oh,
I'll email it to you, or
wow. Thank you.
and then you can take a look because like I've learned about Polar. I've learned about like Clerk subscriptions. They
Oh, this is
launched that.
great. Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and a lot of other stuff like that I'm using now that I'm paying these companies on a daily basis just because like this guy's
Oh,
an
yeah, you
amazing
learned through
engineer,
this
by the
guy.
way. Yeah, and he's amazing. Like he builds shit's crazy, like what he
Do
does.
you know him?
I know him virtually, like because we're kind of from the same, I guess, country. But I never met him in person.
Okay, sick, sick.
But
That's
if you
actually
ever
really
want to
cool.
reach out to him, I can definitely make the intro.
Yeah, yeah. If you want to send that to us, we're starting to compile a list of like who this like sort of is going to be in the Flowglad influencer program, and
Yeah.
we're gonna like this year is gonna be we're gonna be going crazy with go to
Mhm,
market. And I mean the product, dude, the product is
mhm,
oh,
mhm,
it's gonna be so nice in the next like 4 weeks. It's already
mhm,
like solid, right?
mhm,
But like in the
mhm.
next like 4 6 weeks, it's
What are
I
you guys doing that's gonna add more
dude. So first of all,
pizzazz? Mhm,
we're built. It's okay. So we're building uh a streaming layer that will stream
mhm,
Flowglad's basically your slice of Flowglad's database into your database for you. So you'll have like almost like a read replica of um of your Flowglad data or the parts
mhm.
that your SDK is going to be using. So there's like no latency or uptime concerns anymore. That's one. Two, we're
Mhm,
going to be rolling out a builder pattern for our SDK. So you can kind of use our SDK like an ORM instead of a REST client, which is like, you know what I'm
mhm.
talking about, right? Where you can use
Interesting.
sort of
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah, I use
Flowglad.
Prisma and Drizzle and so on. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going
Yeah.
to be a
Yeah.
drizzle like DX or a
Mhm,
Zod DX. Um,
mhm,
we're also going to be putting together a Flowglad CLI that will basically give you like pull push style action. So you'll be able to
mhm,
download pricing.yaml files from a registry that we're going to maintain. So you can have like almost like version pricing.yaml files that you can pull
mhm,
down and then like almost like Docker style push the latest version of your pricing.yaml to your development mode environment or your live mode
mhm,
environment. And then finally also adding like a GitHub CI, like a GitHub action that you'll be able to use so that, for example, on merge to main, you can do a checksum where you validate that your pricing.yaml and the types that we generated for you from your pricing.yaml one to one correspond with the state of your pricing YAML in production. So we can kind of like unify state and types for you to
mhm,
have like totally type safe deployment as like part of the CI process.
mhm. Interesting. Are you guys doing anything like one specific kind of, I guess, use case that I'm building is essentially I have to first unify the data in order to put like kind of like an AI agent wrapper essentially
Mm-hmm.
around it, because what I'm trying to do is, for example, have a customer support that's only AI based.
Uh-huh.
So that means that I need all the transaction data too if I as a customer want to query around my products and costs and subscriptions and blah blah blah. So I'm curious like if you guys are doing anything around like Vercel, they've been doing building a lot of this architecture to where you can kind of wrap your routes with their sort of AI agent SDK. I haven't fully implemented this. I don't know exactly how it works, but that's what I've seen. So you can essentially do some stuff and then wrap your own routes to where then you can pass them to the large language model, like some like LangChain and orchestration layer, stuff like that. Anyway,
Can you actually
yeah.
send over documentation of that? I
Yeah,
had
it's they have a templates and there's I was looking at their templates.
that's really
Then
interesting.
they have a number of different templates on their sites. I was kind of exploring that.
Yeah, I would be
But
very
I'll
curious to
forward it
check
to
that
you.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
please do. And then, yeah,
hmm
like, I mean, in terms of getting the payments data to an LLM so that you can use
hmm
it, like make useful customer service actions against it, that's
hmm
um that's also a very interesting use case. I mean, I think like basically the whole premise of Flowglad, it's like
hmm
and maybe we could be clear about this, is that like our conviction is essentially that in the next like 5 years or less, agents are going to be running their own businesses autonomously online on behalf of human like principles essentially. And
hmm
we're trying to build all the infrastructure that's missing for you to be able to shut your brain off knowing that an agent will correctly be able to launch like 50 businesses for you while you sleep and then actually start iterating on each of them and
hmm
sort of like using that as a thought experiment of like what is it that would be holding back that future, and some of the things honestly are like getting useful payments data to agents in a form factor that is like, is it MCP? Is there going to be like sort of context window pollution from like the whole tool registry? Like, some of this type of stuff that the
hmm
whole industry is working out, but like we're trying to get the payments layer
hmm
ready to
hmm
roll into whatever that future looks like.
hmm That's interesting. I'll share with you kind of another sort of startup that I met recently that might be of interest to you because they're kind of also wrapping. And as a matter of fact, through them, I met the founder of Stripe or co-founder of Stripe, who invested in Visa and a few other investors a bit of money in that. But essentially, they're using AI agents to like do the payment transactions.
Hmm.
So more to share just for your own sake, like just to see what else I've kind of come across in the
Which
industry.
one's that?
This guy actually, we met, he's much younger than me, but he's also born in Sarajevo, where I'm from originally. I forgot the name of his company, so I'll have to look it up real quick. But let me I'll forward it to you also. Um, but they have a pretty interesting story. I was kind of their hackathon, so played around with their SDK
Yeah, yeah.
before.
What's the guy's name? Do you remember that?
It's like Talon, or it has a he's from like, let me see, I think it's Bichak chick. She has like Thailand. Yeah. He doesn't have a Bosnian name, so that's why I was but here, let me his name, the company name is Payman. So Payman. And then
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's
so he's
right.
yeah, so I met him just as they announced their like first round, and they got like some $7 million as their kind of seed money.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they have a pretty strong team or something like that. But I was surprised. Oh, it says here 13 million from Visa, Coinbase, Circle, and then some private investors.
Wow. Okay, this is crazy.
Yeah, but
Sick.
yeah, take a look. Awesome. Cool, man. Well, I it was a pleasure. I have to kind of go soon pick up my kids, so I have to drop. But
Yeah, yeah,
let
of
me
course.
forward you the yeah, Code with Antonio is the name of the channel on YouTube. So I'll forward you his info. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
but it's a very effective way for us developers to get
Oh, for
into
sure.
any stack. So
For
anyway.
sure. Dude, thank you so much. This was awesome, Vuk.
That was awesome, Ryan. Say hi to Harris, and then hopefully, when I'm in New York, I'll definitely reach out to you guys.
Yeah, please do. Take
All
care,
right,
man.
man. Take
All
care.
right,
Bye.
bye.